Hello everyone, Zellerant here, and for today's video on Umamusume, as we're getting ready to move into Make a New Track from Unity Cup, and I've started to ramp up my great-grandparent grind to kind of prepare myself for that, I've been getting a lot of questions on what I'm actually working on and how it ultimately works into making very strong parents, especially in the future as we move through the scenarios. And one of the big things that people really haven't really thought about at this point as we're getting ready to move into Make a New Track is that we're gonna lose access to one of the first unique skills to scenarios that we have, which are all the ignited skills that are available within Unity Cup. You will not be able to get them anywhere else outside of getting them in Unity Cup or through Spark Inspiration. And that is the main thing I want to talk about, is trying to build up great grandparents that have these skills within them so that you can eventually continue to keep them in your bloodline all the way into the future. Because one thing people saw a lot of it in the JP version when I've played on it, that we are still seeing the ignited wit still in use on frontrunners to this day in JP, because it still has a lot of value, kind of being that replacement, or it can work alongside prudent positioning. And one actual parent example that someone had showed me that's actually out there right now in JP. Now this one is pretty crazy, but if I just kind of showcase here, right here on X, someone posted a parent they have on JP. Now this one has a lot of good stuff, like it has all 4 weather greens, it has, I believe this is Highlander, firm conditions, a bunch of other stuff, but the key thing that it has is right at the bottom. It has 12 scenario skills, and as you see, including some of the ignition ones. Now I can't read all the Japanese on it, but I can kind of start seeing, I think these are some of the scenario ones down here, and as you can see, they have a ton of them, and this is going to be something that we're going to see as we move scenario to scenario. Right now in Unity Cup, we have the ignited ones right here, and you know you can get a white spark on it, and the white spark give you the skill, which means you can get the skill on that character that got it from inspiration, which then means you can get the spark again. So you can continuously grind up parents and grandparents to get these built into your bloodline to continue to pass them on. And we're going to see that with, I think, pretty much every future scenario. Just to look at Make a New Track, for example. I'll have to switch over to the JP version. It's not on here for global yet. But if we go to Make a New Track, we are going to have a skill. Now, this one, I don't know if will have as much value. I don't know if this is one I want to try and build into Great Grandparents. But it has this glittering star white. Now, this is kind of a mixed skill that has speed, acceleration, recovery. It's a 50 after the 50 mark, so after halfway through the race, this will randomly pop, and it's a very tiny speed, very tiny acceleration, although it's 0.1, and a very tiny stamina. So this one, not as strong, but it is another skill that we're going to pick up. Going into Grand Live, Grand Masters, they all have their own unique skills, and through time, you're going to want to build certain ones, especially the very strong ones, into your great-grandparent chain so that you can pass them off to your grandparents. They then go into your parents, that then can make very strong aces. And as we've seen, it is very possible to do this, and we're going to kind of show some of mine that I've kind of grinded out and how you can approach it right now if you want to start working on them. Now, you can kind of make up for this and make a new track through borrows, because people like me who grind them out and eventually have a very strong parents, like using this one for example, if you were in the JP version and you borrow this parent, you have the ability to potentially get all of these off inspiration, take all those skills, and then you can spark them, and that's how you can kind of get them in your own chain. But that's going to be much harder than just getting yourself set up for success right now, so you can have it on both sides of your parent and reduce that RNG of having to try and get them off inspiration. And so kind of going in here, we'll go back into the game. I'll kind of showcase how I've been doing it at this point. And so the two big ones to me that I think are going to be the most important to carry from Unity Cup into the future are going to be Ignited Wit and Ignited Power. Ignited Guts is very similar to that Make a New Track one, where it's both a speed and acceleration, but the white is just so bad that it's not going to be worth it to try and carry. The stamina one, there's so many stamina skills, not too worried about that one. The speed one I think is decent, but trying to carry 3 is going to be very, very hard. Now, if I can pull it off, I will, and that's what I'm kind of grinding on. But that one's good. I feel like the power one, which is an additional gamble acceleration you can have for the late race, plus the wit one as a good one for your front runners as kind of your prudent positioning replacement, are going to be very, very good for that. Now, how I've been doing it is, first, I kind of started off with like a default one that I already had that had, I think, wit on it. And then I paired it with an actual borrow out there. There's actually already a fairly good borrow that exists. And actually, it'd probably be easier to find the borrow if I just go into career here. And so I just use that to make, we'll just pick one here, this borrow right here. So, and you can search this one up very easily. It's the only one that exists that has this set up. So this borrow right here has a Maruzensky that has groundwork 2 stars. Now that's just a bonus. Groundwork we can continue to get into the future. I just consider it a bonus so I can potentially get a decent grandparent out of this, even though it's more focused on great-grandparents. But it's groundwork, but I think it has power and it has wit. But not only does it have it on the parent, it has wit right here and wit right here. So having this alongside my own starting point I had, which is a McQueen here. This is a McQueen I built that has wit. Now it has ignited speed in it, but it's now no longer my chain. But it had ignited wit here. And so I used those two together to then build this Kawakami Princess. This Kawakami Princess I got lucky on, and I got groundwork, wit, and power. Now, one thing that's kind of, you might say, is a little bit nice about grinding great-grandparents is I don't really care about the blues and pink. Now, if I get very strong blue and pink alongside having those, that's even better, because now that's a good grandparent versus just being a great-grandparent. But for a great-grandparent, I don't care about the green, the blue, or the pink. I'm just trying to get these skills. The main two are power and wit. So now I have this Kawakami Princess that has power, it has wit here, it has wit here with that McQueen. I don't have power on her, because you have to start somewhere, and you can only get one per career run. And then this one has power and wit. But now that I got this Kawakami Princess, I can now use that as my parent alongside this borrow, and now I have a crap ton of wit and a decent amount of power. So I have wit here, 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 and I got wit here. I get wit like 70 to 80% of my runs through inspiration, which then means now I'm trying to get power built into it. And this is the looping, and I've made videos on this in the past, but the goal is to basically force power as the ignited at the very end of my run, take power, should hopefully get wit off of inspiration, take both skills, and whatever parent I'm making at this point in time. Right now I have it as vodka, but it can be really anybody. You want to look for ones that have decent affinity with the current ones that you have, so you have the better chance of getting the inspiration. And so right now it's vodka that's in there. And so to force power, I get power, and then I'll eventually have, say, a vodka that has, this is the grandparent, so I'll have power and wit. I'll have the Kawakami Princess that has power and wit, and then hopefully my vodka will have power and wit. And now I'll have two parents that have wit and power on all 6 of them. And that means now I'll have a very, very good chance of getting both of them on inspiration. Now that I have a very good shot of getting both of them on inspiration, that's where I can try and get speed built in, which is going to definitely be very, very hard, because the odds of getting all 3, it gets lower and lower as time goes on, as you try and add more on, especially right now, because we don't have any of the quality of life that JP has. We don't have re-rolling. We don't have Spark Selector. We don't have the newest thing they got, which is the easier parent grinding, because you don't even have to do the run. So, I'm going to try and get speed built in, and if I get one with 3 speed, now I'll have one that's 3 speed on the top, power and wit, and then I'll try and make another one with speed, and then the eventual goal through that looping is to have speed, power, and wit on all 6 of them in the chain, and now I can very easily spark them and make a new track, and I have a very good starting point for making my grandparents. Make a new track is going to be very nice for making grandparents in the sense that you can get very high stats on everything, which includes 1100, which gives you that 10% chance of getting a 3-star on the blue. And that is effectively how you kind of want to loop the great-grandparents. Now, when it comes to making the parents and grandparents, ultimately, it's still up to chance on getting the right stuff. You just have to use the support cards to get them. Now, you will on occasion, I've been running Silent Suzuka, here for example, as the one that I was trying to get the stuff on. I ended up getting one that was not half terrible as a parent, because I did get groundwork on it, but I did not get power and wit. So this is the thing, you kind of make it a dual purpose. And while this one was a failure for making my great-grandparent, it has potential for a medium, because it has 2 medium. It has ignited power and wit on both of these. It has groundwork on all of the chains. So this could potentially be a front-runner parent here. Now, the blues aren't as good, but if you're going with Guts build, speed's actually pretty decent, and I'm not too worried about getting 3 blues. I think way too many people focus on 3 on the blues. They try and get those 9 blues, which are really good for the stat stick, but then they get screwed on the skills, and that is what skills ultimately are what are going to win you the race. If you have similar stats to your opponents, even if yours are a little bit lower, if you have a really strong mid-game, it doesn't matter that they're faster or that they have a little bit more power. You're just going to overpower them with popping off a lot more skills that having very strong parents are going to be good for. And this is kind of just why I'm moving on to now doing another one, just because there's always the potential that I can get decent parents / grandparents out of these runs as well. It's kind of like a dual purpose. And now, one question someone had asked is, well, how am I forcing power? You probably noticed as you're doing runs, you get speed probably 90% of the time, especially when you're doing your ace runs. And that has to do with your deck. So not only do you have to build a deck around trying to get skills that you want to get the whites for, when you're trying to build your parents and grandparents, this one's a little bit different in that while there's certain things I want to try and pick up, like groundwork, why I have Smart Falcon, the Unity mechanic works in that you get the last thing is based off your, when you look at your team stats, when you click the button at the top to look at it, which I can just start one to kind of show it. You want to be, whatever's the skill or whatever stat is the highest rating there is the one that you will get the skill for. And so to pull it off, I've been using a 3 power, 2 speed, 1 stamina deck. Now, depending on the Uma you're going with, if they don't have like any long races or whatnot, you can probably just go 4 power. But the goal is to just spam power as much as possible. The speed cards are there to, of course, give me at least enough speed to win. But I want to be able to hit power. And there are times, and it can be tricky, where you might have a very strong speed hit, especially towards the end. But you have a decent amount of arrows on power, and you're going to want to hit power instead, just to make sure that power stays ahead of speed. And that's what you'll see with a lot of my parents here. My power is much higher than my speed. On some of these, it's like a crazy amount higher, depending on how the rainbows landed. Like right here, you just got to keep hitting power. Sometimes you have to sacrifice speed. It can be a little bit tricky, depending on the Uma, depending on the races and the opponents they have, because you need the balanced speed enough to win the races. But you need to also be able to make sure that power is the highest team stat, which then effectively guarantees you'll get power. And the nice thing about doing this 2 speed, 2 power, or 3 power deck is, if I'm lucky enough to get both wit and power on inspiration, which has happened on occasion, I can then shift. I can then shift over to just spamming speed. So I just completely stop hitting power, and then I just spam speed, and then I'll get the speed spark or speed skill at the end, and then it's possible I could very well get speed, power, and wit in one. And then it's just keep rotating. Right now, my goal is, because I'm having to use a borrow, is as soon as I get another Uma that has both of them on it, I no longer have to borrow. That's the thing that's really tricky, and this is why if you do this now, it's going to make your life easier in the long term if you really want to grind out very strong great-grandparents, is when I no longer need to borrow. I can just run all day. I can just keep doing runs all day. And ultimately, that's how you make strong grandparents and parents and great-grandparents, is you just keep doing runs. The law of large numbers. So right now, if you kind of look at the affinity math, I think it's like a 70%. It's like if you have these white skills in the parents and grandparents, it increases your chances of actually getting the spark. So by default, it's 20%, and then every parent slash grandparent that has it, it adds an additional 2.5%. So if you have it on all 6, that one's going to bring it up to, I think, 35%. And then when you do the math on that, it's about a 4% chance to get 2 of your whites. And so on average, it should take about 25 runs to get a parent that has both power and wit. But then you have, of course, the gamble with the stars. You have, so there's a lot of other things in there. So the more runs you can do, the better. And that's why doing it now, getting your own parents or getting your own great-grandparents now that you can just infinitely loop and not have to worry about borrows, especially if you're free to play and you need to use those borrows for making your parents slash even aces. This is going to be key to that. Now, I know a lot of people thinking maybe long term, this might feel monotonous. It can be, but this is how some people work to build like those really, really strong parents on the JP version. Now, it will get easier with time because you're probably thinking, well, what happens when we have all these other skills coming in? We have the Make a New Track one, we'll have the Grand Live one, we'll have Grand Masters, which has a really good one for front runners with a early race acceleration gamble that you can have. That's where the quality of life helps. When we get auto, for example, my plan to make really strong great-grandparents, parents, and grandparents and parents is just to have the game running all day. I will literally start an auto, let it play through, finish, do it again, and again, and again, and again, and again, until I get that luck. That's going to take a lot of hits. Now, I get that for somebody that's not willing to spend carrots to do additional runs when they run out of TP, that's not really possible. You might be able to just rely on borrows. So you don't have to stress about it too much, but I would try and get at least one side of the chain with wit and power before we get into Make a New Track. And you can already probably start that by just looking through your parents. You can ignore your blue. You can ignore your pink. Those don't matter. So you might have something that's just chilling there that is good. You just kind of have to dig through them and find it. And then you just use a borrow and start from there. And that is pretty much it. That is kind of how you're going to want to grind it out. It is just a continuous grind. You can only... the odds are what they are. And until we get the quality of life that we'll be getting down the line, like re-rolling and all that, it's just doing a lot of runs right now that can be a little bit monotonous. At least you only have really 2 that you mostly should care about, which is the wit and power. Speed one will be a nice to have, but even that's something that I'm not seeing myself very likely having ready to go as we get very close to Make a New Track. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And if you just let me know if you have been kind of grinding out or preparing great-grandparents for Make a New Track. I know this is something I talked about in the past, but I thought it kind of just remind people on it, since I know a lot of us have we just got into the monotonous mode of making our parents for making our aces for the current champions meeting, because the acceleration has definitely made it very hard. Myself included. I kind of was slacking on parents and my great-grandparents as well. So I'm just trying to keep up with building the parents for aces. But in the long term, this is what's going to make you very, very strong and also get you a lot of borrows as people start to learn this, especially down the line. You got to think like 4 scenarios, 5 scenarios from now. If you have that freaking great-grandparent that has like 5 of these skills in the chain, people like me that are looking for them to maybe potentially pair them up with will borrow it. And you will get a lot of borrows and follows, ultimately, which gives you a lot more of those club points, which I feel like they'll fall off in their value, but it will definitely help out in the long term. But yeah, that's pretty much it for now. And if you like my content, if you can like, comment, subscribe, it really helps. And thanks for watching.